Robin Anderson, the owner and creator of Sass Queen Bling. And in this tutorial today, I'm going to show y'all how I made this fabric tumbler with this adorable Christmas truck topper. Ain't it precious? Oh my gosh, it's so precious. Let's go. First, I'm going to start out with my topper. I've got ice cubes and ice chunks that I got off of Amazon. I'll try to list those in the description box below. And I have taken off the slider. I'm going to use the straw hole here, so I don't need the slider. These are the pieces I took off. And I'm going to use painter's tape and tape off the back of the underside of the lid, because I don't want anything to leak under there like the epoxy or the hot glue. So painter's tape works perfect for this. You just want to make sure you cover it good, push it down well. I got these cute little mini ornaments from Hobby Lobby. They are so cute. I'm going to use these on my topper. And I'm going to use the ice cubes to help build this up, because I want the truck to kind of be on a snow hill. And I don't want to use that much hot glue to fill that completely up like that to make a hill. So I'm going to use the ice cubes and the chunks to help build that up. This is the cute little Christmas truck. I also found it at Hobby Lobby. It's a Christmas ornament. It's resin, so you don't have to do anything to it. But see, this little hook was in there to hang it on the tree, and it just unscrews. And I used my jewelry pliers thingy-majiggies and just inserted it like that and twisted it out. Very simple. And first, I want to start by using my hot glue. I want to fill this in some with the hot glue, and then I'm going to use my ice cubes and my ice chunks to help me kind of build up a hill. At first, I want to fill this in quite a bit with some hot glue. Now I'm going to start adding my ice cubes and some of my ice chunks. And I just want to build this up some so that I can make a hill for the truck. Well, kind of like it's going up a hill. And so I'm just putting the ice cubes and the ice chunks down in the hot glue. I'm just building it up. And after I build this up, then I will fill it all in some more with some hot glue, just to kind of decrease the amount of epoxy that I'm going to have to put on here. The epoxy I just want to use to seal all of this. I really don't want to have to fill it all in with epoxy. Now that I've got that filled in, I just want to see where I'm going to place my truck here. I think I have this built up enough now. And I just want to make sure I have enough hot glue where I'm wanting to put the truck. The good thing about placement is if you don't like where you sat it at, because the truck is resin, it's not too hard to lift it back off and replace it. And the hot glue will peel off. And see, I have my straw hole here, making sure I don't cover that. Now I'm just going to fill in underneath the truck any gaps with the hot glue, because I want to make sure all that's filled in underneath. Now I think I have that pretty good and filled in. I'm placing my ornaments on here. I'm just pushing these down into the hot glue. You want to make sure that your glue is still hot so that those ornaments push down into it. The ornaments have a little loop on it where you hang them on the tree, and I'm pressing that into the hot glue. That looks perfect. Excuse me. And I'm still just making sure as I go that I don't have any gaps under there. I want all that closed in really well. So I'm just filling those in. Now, the little hole that I have on top of the truck, I'm going to just take a permanent marker and I just want to kind of dab that. The truck is already rustic and has a little bit of black on it, so this will just match. But I just want to dab that. I did fill that in with a little bit of hot glue, so I'm just touching that up to kind of hide the hot glue. And then whenever I epoxy, I will just put a little bit of epoxy over that to seal it. I don't think it'll hurt anything to not worry about that, but I just didn't want that hole there. Now I'm going to take my apple barrel white acrylic paint and these two small paint brushes. Excuse me, y'all. And I'm going to paint all of my hot glue white because I want it to look like snow. So I'm going to paint it white with the acrylic paint, but then you will see that I changed my mind and I decided to use fabric paint. I probably still would paint it white and then do the fabric paint over it. You don't have to probably, but I like the look of the fabric paint because it gives more of a fluffy snow look. And you'll see that whenever I do it. Now, since I have this snow look going on, I want some snow on the tips of my tree. So I'm just taking my acrylic paint and I'm just brushing it on the tips of the branches. And whenever I seal everything with epoxy, I will just seal these tips with the epoxy also, so that that acrylic paint doesn't wash off when I wash the topper. And I also dabbed a little bit of snow on that hole that was on the top of the truck there. And it just fits in perfect like that. And I'm loving this. I love, 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 love the red Christmas truck. Now I'm going to take my tulip fabric paint, white fabric paint, and I'm going to just go over the snow areas just to kind of give it a fluffy snow look. And then after I do that, I will let this fabric paint dry overnight because it's kind of thick in some spots. But see, I'm just going over it, just making the snow fluffy. And I'm going to cover all of the snow, and then I will leave it, like I said, let it dry overnight so that it gets good and dry before I go over it with epoxy. So I let the fabric paint dry overnight, and I've mixed up 10 milliliters of epoxy. I won't need this much, but I just mixed that much up. And I'll let it sit for 45 minutes to get thick, because as I'm brushing it on here, I don't want it to leak everywhere, because you know epoxy is self-leveling, so it's going to move. And I don't want it to leak all over everywhere and off the lid. So I let it sit for 45 minutes and thicken. And now I'm going to use my paintbrush. Use a disposable paintbrush if you have one. This is one I don't mind throwing away when I'm done. And I'm just going to brush over all the white acrylic paint that I have here that I put on the truck and the tree. And then I'm going to go over all the snow and make sure I cover all of that, because I want everything to be sealed. And see, I'm just touching up or just brushing over these white acrylic spots on the tree branches, because I don't want that white acrylic paint to wash off. Sorry y'all, I'm having allergy issues. And I just want to cover everything really well. And because I let that epoxy sit, it's so much easier to manage doing this. Now I'm ready to apply my fabric to the cup. You need Mod Podge, a nice paintbrush, a cup if you don't want to double dip in the Mod Podge, scissors, an X-Acto knife with a sharp blade, and I'm using a 32-ounce plump from the Steel Magnolia. I've already sanded it, wiped it down with alcohol, and I got this material from Hobby Lobby. It is so beautiful. You see, it's kind of busy. It has so much going on here. So you kind of want to lay it out flat and pick what you're going to want on your cup. Because I have the Christmas truck on there. I want this right here that says Christmas trees. And I want this picture and this picture. I want all of those pictures to be on the cup. So you want to just lay it out, see what you want. I kind of already have in mind what I want. So I'm going to go with the end over here, and I just want to make sure I'm going to cut off the right amount. And you want to use good sharp scissors when you cut this. I'm going to cut off this edge. If you've ever seen fabric, it has this very edge that you don't want. And I'm just going to trim that off because I want a good clean edge there. And then I will cut across and down, giving myself extra material. Okay, now I've got that all cut. I'm ready to apply it to the cup. First I'm going to line it up. There is a line in this fabric, so you want to make sure you have it straight up and down if your fabric has any line in it. I kind of place it where I'm going to want it to go with what picture I want showing. I know I want the Christmas trees here showing. So see how that has a line across the top? I'm just lining it up there and then wrapping it around. And once I get it where I want it at, I will stand it in front of me and look at the line that's going up and down and make sure that line is straight. You don't want to get the material on the cup and then it be lopsided. See, I want this showing and this showing. It's so pretty. And now that I know what I want showing on there, this is the line right here that's straight up and down. So once I get it on there, I want to make sure that line is straight. Now I'm going to take my Mod Podge and I'm ready to brush it on the cup. When you apply the Mod Podge, you want to make sure you do good, even strokes, you don't want it thick because it only takes a little bit. And you don't want any lumpy Mod Podge under there because that will show. So I'm just lining up my line here. And then I'm going to brush on the Mod Podge nice and even. Like so. Good, even, thin coats. Now I'm going to lay my material on there. See, this is the line that needs to be straight up and down. So I'm going to place it on here. Stand it up in front of me to see if I have it straight. Because while that Mod Podge is still wet, I can still maneuver it where I need it to go. Take your time with this part because this is going to be the building block for the rest of this tumbler. And if okay, so I got that on there and got it straight. I'm just rubbing that down and I'm ready to Mod Podge the rest of the cup. I like to do it in sections at a time so that I can make sure that that material is down flat as I'm going and I don't have any lumps under there. So again, just nice even coats as you go. Not too much. Now that I have it wrapped, you see I have this little overage. You want that to come over a little bit. You do not want to cut that right on that seam because you want to have a little overage. So, because this is 100% cotton, so if you cut it right on that seam and leave a gap and then you wet it with Mod Podge and it dries, it's going to shrink up and leave you a larger gap. So go over. You want to have that overage and use your craft knife to cut down that and remove that, the little bit of overage that you don't want on there. So again, do not cut right on that seam of that fabric. You do want it to come over somewhat so that if you get shrinkage, it doesn't leave a gap. And now I've got that done, I'll just go over that seam. See, I have here what I wanted. The front and the back. And now I'm going to go over that seam with my Mod Podge. Make sure that that's closed. And then I'll be ready to trim off the top and the bottom. Now I'm just going to take my scissors and go around that rim and just trim off the excess. I do find, I use my bigger scissors, but I do find it easier to use my Cricut scissors, the small scissors. I'm sure you can buy just a small set of scissors at the craft store. You don't have to get the Cricut brand. But you just want to cut along that rim like so until you get that removed. You're going to do that on the top and the bottom. Now I have my Cricut scissors. I'm just going to go along that top edge and just trim off any threads that might have been left behind. These are perfect for that. Any small set of fabric scissors will work to do this. And you're just trimming off any threads that are left behind, loose threads or any fabric that's raised up above that rim. Trim all that off. After I get done with this part, then I want to see how clean that is. That's how you want it. Take my Mod Podge, and you want to make sure that along that seam there's no gaps in there. Make sure that the Mod Podge is all the way to the edge under that fabric and push that sealed so that that whole rim is sealed. And you want to do that all the way around. After I get done with this top, then I will trim off the bottom the same way I did the top and seal it the same way. Now that I've got that done, I'm ready to seal the whole entire cup with Mod Podge. I'm going to go over the whole cup with Mod Podge with a nice thin layer, cover the whole entire thing, and I will let that dry, and then I will do that 2 more times, letting it dry in between. Once I get done with 3 layers of Mod Podge, I will let that dry overnight, because remember there's Mod Podge under the fabric, then I have 3 layers of Mod Podge over the fabric. So I want to let that dry overnight so that I can be sure that's dry before I put epoxy on there. So you just go over the whole entire cup like so, let it dry, and then do that 2 more times. Now the cup is dry. You can see that the Mod Podge is clear. It's not completely dry all the way through, but the Mod Podge is clear, so dry enough for this. I want to go ahead and put my fabric paint drip on, and all of that can dry overnight together. I'm just going around the rim with a thick amount of tulip fabric paint to create my drip. I'm going to do that on this end and on the other end, because I want to drip on both ends like snow. Then I want to tap it on the bottom so that that drip will drip down. Only tap it as much as you want it to drip down, because if you don't want a long drip, then you don't want to keep tapping it. And I'm using Peachy Olive's head wig glitter just to go around the edge. It's like a flat white, so I want to use that as like my snow look. I'm only going to go around the edge of the drip, because then I want to come back with opal on the drips themselves. Now I have my famous no-name opal. I have no idea what this opal is. Any opal will work. I don't know how I got one without a name, but anyways. And I'm using Winter is Coming snowflakes from Grateful Glitters. And I'm going to put the snowflakes, just drop the snowflakes strategically where I want them at on the drips. And then I'm going to sprinkle the opal all over the drips. You don't want to just drop those snowflakes on there because they'll be all over the place and be a mess. So just kind of place them where you want them at. I'm going to do that, and then I will, like I said, sprinkle the opal all over the bottom of the drips there. Now I want to do the opposite end of the cup the same way with the tulip fabric paint. I'm going to do my drip, and then I will do the head wig on the edge, and then the opal and my snowflakes the same as I did the opposite end. When I got done with that, I let that dry overnight like I said. And remember, I have this stainless steel on the bottom. I used saran wrap and wrapped my cup and then taped it with painter's tape and then went outside and spray painted that white and let that dry. And now I have 30 milliliters of epoxy, and I'm going to go ahead and epoxy this. I will let that spin for 6 hours, and then I will go right in with a second coat and let that dry for 12 hours, and then I will be ready to sand it. Now that has dried for 12 hours, now I'm ready to sand it. I'm using a 60 grit sanding block to sand it. I want to create a thin stainless steel line around that rim so that I have a nice area for the epoxy to adhere to and create a seal. So just slant the sanding block at an angle and sand all the way around that rim and create a small thin line. That's all you want to do. And then I want to sand the whole entire cup just to be sure I don't have any bumps or anything like that, and that that's all good and smooth, and that my drips are good and smooth before I go into my final layer of epoxy. Now I've sanded it. I've mixed up 30 milliliters of epoxy. I wiped it down good with alcohol, and then I sealed it with polyacrylic. So just to be sure that I don't have any contaminants or anything on the cup that would interfere with this final layer of epoxy. So the polyacrylic is just what I buy at Lowe's to seal it with, and I let that dry, and now I'm doing the 30 milliliters of epoxy, and this will be my last and final coat, and it is so beautiful. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for following me. Remember to hit the bell so you can get any of my updates. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss anything. Follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Pinterest, and Facebook. I do giveaways. So anyone who shares or comments on my stuff, you may get chosen for a giveaway. You never know. Thank you. I appreciate each and every one of you. Bye.